So what I want to talk about is building Chrome extensions with Ember.js, Ember-CLI. How many people here have used or built any kind of web application or even like a small demo in Ember.js? How many people have used Ember-CLI? Okay, great. So you kind of will follow some of the concepts. Let's move into it. What is an Ember app? It's a single page web application. It's client side. It's stateful. It contains a series of states, which is kind of important when you start talking about like what a Chrome extension is, because unless your Chrome extension, like if you have a pop-up or something, is just going to be one page, like the real facility of what you get from like Chrome, like in the toolkit, is like you could link to another HTML page and do things like that, but to like create like a real, I guess, like stateful extension, like where you kind of move through states and like do different things or like pull up in like new options or menus or like use a feature, like Ember suits itself like really well for like basically having like a little window and being able to program a whole application to it with JavaScript and HTML. And then an Ember app runs HTML and JavaScript. Then we can say like, what is a Chrome extension? Its specific purpose is to enhance the web user's experience. It integrates with the Chrome browser, and it a lot of times will talk between like a Chrome browser being embedded and some sort of like web resource, often like via some kind of API. One of the important things to really realize about a Chrome extension is you're not going to load like a Ruby website or something like that like into your Chrome extension. It's almost like developing for like a mobile app, like where you develop your mobile app in Objective-C or whatever language, Java, and then the communication that you have with any sort of backend, like i.e. like the application Chrome extension for, via some sort of API. So think of it as almost like two sandboxes, just an API routing. Chrome extension also runs HTML and JS, so there's good overlap there for using Ember. And one of the downsides is with the Chrome extension, there's no real tooling built into it. So there's no like right way or like Google approved way of building your Chrome extension. Like really like your options are like a JavaScript file and an HTML file. For the purpose of this talk and kind of like what we've been doing so far, we're going to talk mostly about the pop-up type of Chrome extension, which is you'll get like a little icon in your browser window. You've probably seen them before. It pops open like a little window and you can do some sort of like interactive programming. So it just lets you expose some sort of application like right there at a finger click instead of having to go to a completely different website. Why use Ember? Ember makes it very easy to manage your extension state. The CLI gives us really robust tooling. So if you've used Ember CLI, you'll know that it's built on top of Broccoli. So like any of the Broccoli extensions, basically like that. So you can build CoffeeScript, you can build Sass, you can build Stylus, probably less, Emblem for your views, like which is sort of like slim. So it gives you like a lot of flexibility, like in the type of build environment that you want to do. If you just were to say build it without like some tooling, you could use Grunt, you could use other things to like kind of like compile JS, but this gives a nice ecosystem as the Ember CLI ecosystem to Chrome extension. And then Ember Data, this goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier, works with your API and things like that to make transferring data that's created in your Chrome extension back to some sort of backend service if your Chrome extension is going to integrate with a web app. Just going over the Ember CLI tooling, it's really great because you get multiple build environments. So what we'll do a lot of the time is like we'll have our development environment, which we just run in the normal browser. And then when we get ready basically to install it as a Chrome extension, we'll build it as production. And then that can get packaged and pushed up to the Chrome store. ES6 modules, which are kind of really neat if anybody's ever played around with them. People who've done Ember CLI probably obviously have touched ES6 modules. But otherwise, like you kind of end up with just your global JavaScript. Ember CLI works with Broccoli modules. Went over that. It's got a quick and easy project generator, so you can kind of just do Ember new and then whatever your extension name is going to be. And then it kind of just builds like a whole nice scaffold for you. So it lets you set up a really standardized project structure. And we now have Ember add-ons, which are really nice. So if you want to add some kind of new component or like pull in like a component that somebody made, like autocomplete or something like that, like you can install that as an Ember add-on. One of the extensions we're working on or working with right now is called Ember Simple Auth, which is to do authentication in Ember apps, and they just released some Ember add-ons that make it really easy to integrate with their library. So there's a few pain points when you start talking like what Ember kind of expects to be there and what Chrome can be strict about. It's really strict about how JavaScript can be called, especially from your index.html file, which is kind of like the default file that gets built under your dist directory. By default, you can't eval code. So like in development mode, one of the things is that it will wrap all your module definitions in eval. I'm not really sure why it does that. I'm sure there's a really good reason. That's one bit. Oh, okay. And then no inline script tags in your main popup.html or index.html. So what you'll notice in like a standard Ember-CLI scaffolded program is like it does a lot of the app initialization right in index.html, and Google goes, no, like we really don't want you to do that, like include it in a different file. Here's an example of a couple of the errors that you get in that case. The first one is basically having a script tag with inline HTML. It'll throw this and your app doesn't run. I think that you could probably overwrite this in the manifest. However, I'm sure that their defaults are there for a reason in some sort of security standpoint. So we don't just edit the manifest. We can move a lot of the content outside of the index.html. And the second one is, I believe, if you're trying to load a script. Oh, the second one is when you try to run code with eval. So the second one's really easy to fix. We just basically build in production mode, and that takes all the eval code out and compiles. So like when you actually get ready to move it into your Ember extension, like we just build in the production environment. And the first one's a little more complicated because it requires taking the like environment and the app initialization out of the index.html and compiling it as a separate file that we can do later. So a few of the things that are a little rough is there's no support for live reloading inside the extension because the extension doesn't run the code that's running on your Ember server. It just runs the compiled code that's in your dist folder. One of the goals that we have is probably like to like make that easier or make it work finally, like so that like you can build in a development mode, have it run in your Chrome extension, have it do the live updating. Whether that means like building in development mode, like iframing it or something like that, just for testing, but we still need a way to talk to the Chrome APIs. So that's still kind of out to be done. Ember Chrome extension does not work inside your extension. Okay, so that sounds confusing, but it's really that the if you right-click and hit inspect your like extension, and you try to open the Ember like developer tools, it will say that there's no Ember app there. And there's no promise API for Chrome yet. So Chrome has these API calls that you can make to query things like bookmarks or like what tabs are open and things like that. And right now it's just kind of like an asynchronous call. So like one of my goals like moving forward is to wrap all that stuff into a promise API so that you can do things like load all the user's bookmarks like in a before model or something like that, or in a model call, and then it'll return and work the way that like a typical like data adapter or something. So one of the things that we created was Ember-CLI Chrome, which is an Ember add-on that fixes some of the minor problems and just sets your app up more like a Chrome extension. It's available on npm right now. And it will automatically create like the manifest JSON based on your package JSON. So if you have like the app name and the version and a description, it'll automatically pull that out of your package JSON and include it in your manifest JSON, and it builds the manifest JSON and puts it in your dist folder. So it just sets stuff up and keeps things managed for your Chrome extension like a little easier. Like I said, so like the future would be the promise wrapper for the Chrome API, the live reloading, and then probably to either extend or modify the existing blueprint to include like a few more things that like the Ember app would, or the Chrome extension would benefit from. So I don't think that modifying the blueprint is available in Ember add-ons now, but I know it's on their roadmap. So I'm sure as soon as they kind of get that tooling done a little bit more, we'll extend this. You guys can use it today. It's compatible with Ember-CLI 0.0.37 plus. This is just the extension that I've been working on, or add-on that I've been working on. that does like a few of the compilation steps to make the extension building process a little easier. Basically, how it gets set up is you install the Ember-CLI Chrome add-on via npm, remove all the script tags from index.html, add the Ember Chrome.js file that it creates. You can run the server. Then when you test it, you just go to extensions and load the dist folder as an unpacked module. So this is kind of like a practical example of like how you would run like an Ember app inside of a Chrome extension. So it's really neat. So like we basically built this little web app in Ember that's like multiple states, and then you can do things like call the Chrome API to get the tab screen URL. So in this example, it's for a bookmarking tool, and basically whenever you click this little guy here, it will open this and populate the current tab URL like via like the router. So like when the router's in the model, it creates a new bookmark and then grabs it from Chrome and puts the URL into the bookmark and then passes that to like the setup. So you can kind of see like how this can be useful because I lost my mouse. Yeah, so you can see how like you could basically pull information from Chrome, put it into your extension, and then basically have like a multiple states. So going back, like, so this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. The nice thing about this is, so like we can have a state basically where they're not signed in and give them like a login prompt, and then basically using all this tooling and like stuff that Ember already gives us, we can easily create like a application that you can sign into as a Chrome extension. It'll manage that state. It'll decide whether or not it knows who you are. If it doesn't, it'll give you the login screen. If not, it gives you the new bookmark screen. So you authenticate through that page, and then it basically gives you this page. So it moves through different routes and URLs to do it. Where if you did that in a typical just HTML and JavaScript, you'd have to like worry about things like the router, things like that. So it gives you all the advantages, but like in a Chrome extension, and it's actually kind of useful. A Chrome extension might not just be a single pane; it might be a few things. So another thing would be like importing bookmarks. So we want to have the ability for the user who has our Chrome extension to be able to import all their bookmarks into our backend service. So we can call a Chrome API that says, what are all the users' bookmarks? We're going to pass that JSON to our web service, and then it can basically do like an import. Oops. So I can show you kind of like the setup for it. Should be as easy as Ember new meetup demo. So this is going to go ahead and start scaffolding a new Ember project in Ember-CLI. People who know Ember-CLI will have a pretty good idea of what's going on here, but it's similar to like Rails new, or like if you use some other kind of framework, it just basically downloads a list of pre-composed template files, and then we'll basically build the project structure as a new Ember. So can't tell if NPM is being slow. Otherwise, I can open one that I. Oh. So there it created like all the basic Ember CLI blueprint files. And now it's installing package. So
Let's go.
Good. Okay, well, I can jump ahead to an app that we've already made. So after you do that, this one's kind of already finished, but I can kind of talk about the package JSON. So in here, you basically want to add like a description of what your extension does. You know, a demo Chrome app. You can set the version, the name of it, and then dev dependencies are where you basically add this Ember-CLI Chrome. So that actually needs to be bumped up to 0.03. I made some changes. And then you can add this stuff. So to install that, it's so like basically to install this, like after you create a new Ember-CLI app, you can just npm install save dep Ember-CLI Chrome, and that will go ahead and download it from npm and add it to your package file automatically. Let's see, okay, this one actually finished, so let's switch back to this. So in this one, we're going to add a few packages. I cheated because I don't want to type all these, get them wrong. Okay. Did I install that wrong? Oh, okay. So Ember meetup demo. Okay, so it's going to install the emblem compiler, CoffeeScript, and the Ember Chrome CLI. You can install like all these different Broccoli add-ons, and they just kind of start working. So then, once you have the emblem compiler, you can start doing .emblem files, and when you add the Coffee compiler, jump back. So the first thing that we want to do in a new project is in our index.html, like I said before, we have these script tags. So it is like script, meetup demo, env, ember env. You want to remove those to avoid those errors that we were getting from Chrome about like basically running like inline JavaScript. And we can replace that with Ember Chrome.js, which is actually like all that env stuff except compiled into an external file. So once we do that, we can run our server. Yeah. Ember is not. Okay. I've never seen that one. That's why. The Ember data one I've seen. Okay. Somebody didn't build that. I didn't stand up here and debug it. Oh. What is that? It is. Huh? No, I don't think you have to change the profile. I don't know. Let me try building it. This is weird to use app. Oh. Hold on. I know to sidestep this. This was something I was working on. It's probably a bug in what I was working on today. When's that gonna be? Never. I might not have pushed the latest. crash and burn here. Oh, this is a different. I have to get those out of order. Still don't understand why I'm not getting a view. Position manager. There. All right. Apparently, it just doesn't like HPS extensions. Once you have the Ember thing, maybe it doesn't work. Okay, so basically, like that's our like base template, right? So I'm gonna set up a couple more things, actually, or we can just skip ahead. But I have a lot of this stuff saved the way I need it. So we're gonna set up a few routes in here. So this is basically just putting a CoffeeScript router in. This just sets up an index route, a bookmarks route, and a tabs route to kind of illustrate the stuff that the Ember or the Chrome API can do. So if I add a bookmarks.coffee, tabs route. So what this does is it sets up a route, and then the setup controller, we basically query the Chrome API and say, like, for the current window, like, what are all the tabs that are currently in there, and then we loop over them and grab the tabs title, and then we set that on the controller property. So it lets us kind of integrate things that we would get from Chrome, like, into our Ember and use them just like we would stuff. So like once we basically create a property with that information, we can put it there. The one thing that it won't do is update right now, but some kind of polling or something like that is something that could be possible as part of the add-on, so that like it could actually like live bind tab array or the bookmarks array or any other Chrome API array. And then we basically check to see if Chrome tabs exists, because it'll only exist when the extension is running extension mode. Otherwise, we just set some test data so that it's almost kind of like stubbing that call out right now. And then we'll set up the bookmarks controller. And we'll set up, the bookmarks route. And we'll set up the tab controller for the tab controller. We'll put a property in here called tabs. We'll make a bookmarks controller. Called bookmarks. Export these. What was that? He likes this one. I don't know. I think because of the backticks, it's just interpreted as standard JavaScript. So we'll have those. What was that? I didn't update it all the way. Tabs controller. Thank you. Okay, so we have those two controllers. We have the routes. We have the router. The last thing to set up really would be the views. So we can have bookmarks.emblem and we'll say do a UL, and then each bookmark in bookmarks, do an LI until I write a lot of camel. And then a tab view. Tabs. And let's go ahead and add a back button. So we'll do a link to and we'll make an index to kind of navigate to those two routes. Do index.emblem. Say okay, so now we should have bookmarks and tabs. And if we click bookmarks, we'll get an error. Did I not export this? Maybe I didn't save it. There we go. So we have test 1, 2, 3. There were tabs. Okay, so now that stuff's working. So as you see, we're just getting the test data now because we're not actually built into the Chrome extension. So to do that, we're going to stop our server and actually run our server in environment production. Now, the reason we run Ember server environment production versus Ember build production is because even though we're not using the server at port 4200, it'll still continue to monitor files and rebuild our application if we change stuff. So it almost in a way works like a poor man's like guard, or maybe like a really eccentric millionaire's guard who has a server but isn't using it. Depending on how you're looking at it. Okay, so now we want to basically go to Chrome extensions. And load unpacked extension. So this basically lets us point in an arbitrary directory that has a manifest file and load it as a Chrome extension. So it saves you the work of actually creating like a CRX.
In your add-on.
Yeah. It generates the manifest and it generates that Ember server stuff. And I'll go back through that before I'm done if people want. So that loaded this meetup demo extension, and it even ships with a fun little Tomster icon. No copyright infringement intended. So now we can go back to like any page, like this one, for instance, and click, and it'll load basically our page as a Chrome extension in a pop-up. And then this time when we click bookmarks, it's now enumerated basically all the bookmarks that are on the computer. So that's just kind of a proof of concept on how to use the Chrome API. Like you can use any of the Chrome APIs like once you're in extension mode. And then if we go back and look at tabs, it'll basically say like the title of every tab that is in, which is the Square ESX module, GitHub, the meetup demo thing, the extension page. So that kind of just gives a quick demo. And then you use basically the same practices that you use building an Ember app, but now you have access to this Chrome API, like you can grab and stuff. One of the things that the extension also manages is there's a script in it by default that basically changes the pop-up window size to whatever the DOM size is. And I'll show you guys that. But it's pretty helpful because otherwise, like you end up with like whatever your initial view was. So since you're navigating through so many states, it's a useful thing so that you can kind of always kind of manage the size of your window. It's like whatever the Ember app's view height is, or of the main view. So you can control that if you want via CSS, or it'll just kind of auto size stuff. Yeah, so now that you guys have seen that, and I'm sure you're just so So this is the add-on that I developed, and there's one bug with it right now because we have to I inject this application.js, which was the thing that was screwing it up, but it'll get overridden by one in your project. Because right now we have to have a class on the main view in order for the resizing to work. In order to even inject something on top of this for like a class name, like this module has to exist. So what I was trying to do is basically inject this, but something about like Ember and the way that the compiler works, like I might have to import it. Probably. I mean, this was kind of like a last minute thing because I realized what was going on, but there's probably a way to do it.
So the way lookup goes is we'll first check the one.
And
if it's not there, like, give me the.
Oh, okay.
I think you can override.
Okay, yeah, I think so too. Like, so what we're doing is in the let me find it. Where's the lib? So this is the thing that actually does like basically the broccoli add-on part. And what we do here, and I'm probably doing this wrong just because I'm not that great at this yet, but is where is it? Oh, no. I think it's actually in the file that it generates for Ember. Let me see. I think this is where I'm messing up. So I'm basically loading the app view there and setting the prototype class name to Chrome app so that it has the thing that it needs, but that might not be the right way to load. So this is basically the file template that it uses to create that Ember Chrome. So up here you see like this is where like the window env would be set up, and we basically set up the Ember env. We give this function call for DOM subtree modified. So what that does is it just basically monitors the DOM for changes and then fires off the code that changes the body and HTML height so that the Chrome extension auto resizes. And then some load script just for asynchronously loading like vendor and the app stuff. So like when you load this JS, it basically does all the work that used to be done inside of the index.html. And here's like the manifest. So this is another templated file that has like the app name, app description, version, and that's the stuff that it pulls out of the package.json to create the manifest file. And by default, it gives you the all URLs, tabs, and bookmarks permission, and the two default icons of Chrome icon and Chrome icon large for the Chrome stuff, and then the default pop-up index.html. Now, the way that this works is you can override any of the files that it generates by creating them in your public folder. So if you wanted to like really go in there and like change like some of the stuff in the manifest because you didn't like the one that we generate, by putting one in the public folder, it will use that one instead of the generated one. So if you want to change your app name from something besides what your package name is, if you want to do the description, you can basically just copy this file out of the dist folder and put it in your public, and then that one will be used instead of the one add-on generates. Yeah, add-ons are still like a bit hacky, so this may change a bit. Like I said, like we pretty much like they're made to either work on the app tree or the vendor tree, and in this case, we really wanted to use the public tree and do some of our own stuff. So the workaround that was employed was to let me pull this open. Basically, like overwrite the public folder tree, inject our own trees, merge them with the public tree. So that's why you can put stuff in public and it'll overwrite the stuff. Yeah, that's about it as far as that goes. If you guys want to talk to me about any of this stuff or just want to pair or whatever, I'm on Twitter. Yeah, I'm on Twitter at jmcnally or Coactive. That's my company. I'm at github.com/jmcnally. I'm j_McNally on IRC Freenode. Does anybody hang out in IRC in the Ember rooms or anything? Maybe some people didn't even know it existed, but you can go to irc.freenode.net, Ember in an Ember-CLI room, and the people are helpful sometimes. Coactive.com, that's my company. And you can yo me at jmcnally, the new social network. Shout outs to Dewey.to. That's the bookmarking program that we built the Chrome extension for. Everybody should check it out. It's sort of like Delicious and Dig and stuff like that for your personal bookmarks, but with a much more modern twist than Chrome integration. It's not owned by Yahoo, is it? I don't know who owns Delicious, yeah. So it's pretty cool. I think there's still a place for a online bookmarking, sharing, and collaborativeness. So if you guys want to check that out and sign up, that'd be awesome. I want to thank Lawrence. He's been helping me out a lot with Ember stuff. Trek, obviously, for hosting the meetup. Eric Brin for bringing us Eric Brin-driven development. And RWJ Blue, who actually helped me out a lot with some of the Ember add-on stuff.